Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear students. I am Mr. Kadim Khan and I am a lecturer in the Institute of Computing, Kuwait University of Science and Technology. Today we will take lecture number 22 of the subject of object-oriented analysis and design, in which we are going to explain the layout managers in Java. Dear students, layout managers are in fact used to arrange different GUI components in the GUI. Layout managers will enable you to arrange these components which we have previously discussed in different lectures on the GUI surface. So sometimes we require certain layout managers. For example, we require free file layouts such as flow layout. And sometimes we want to bound the particular components on the surface of the screens. So here we require different sort of the layout manager. So layout managers are very much important because these managers help you to arrange different components on the graphical user interface in Java. Here we will discuss many important layout managers here. This is the discussion agenda. It contains the topics of the layout managers. Then we have different types of layout managers. That is flow layouts, border layouts, grid layouts, null layouts. These are four important layout managers that we will discuss here. And after these four layouts manager, we will also provide you different examples in Java. So these will be the programming examples here. And at the end, of course, we have the book references which you must have to study. Before starting the layout managers, we have to understand what is the layout manager. Layout managers defines the layout of the components. So layout means the arrangement of the components on the graphical user interface. Layout managers are used to arrange different components on the containers, while the containers are the main surface of the different components where we will place them. So default layout manager is the flow layout manager. We will discuss the flow layout manager in the upcoming slide. So this is a free file layout which is in fact provided when the components are added inside of the containers. Then the first components will appear on the left position of the screen or on the GUI. And the second containers will appear after the first control, and they will be in fact arranged from the left to right positions. There is the first types of the layout manager. It is called the flow layout. That sets free flow of the layouts for different components. So the components are in fact added to the containers according to the sequence of the code. If the container size is very much small, then the rest of the components which appears on the graphical user interface will appear to the next row of the surface. This flow layout manager is in fact not mostly used because it is used when we have few components added to the container. So when we want to design a very simple GUI, then we will use the flow layout. But when we will design a complex GUI, then we will not use the flow layout because this is in fact free flow of the layout for different components on the GUI. Here is the code. First of all, look at the output. You can see there are four different buttons. First button appears on the top positions and starting from the left position on the GUI, while the second button appears very next to the first button. Similarly, the third and the fourth button appear at the last. So you can see that these buttons are added exactly like when we perform typing on the computer. For example, if you open the notepad, so typing from here, from this position, is started actually. So then we start typing and so on. So when the typing is continued and we reach at the boundary of the notepad, so then automatically the cursor goes towards the next lines, and the next line is starting from the left positions here, and so on. So this is a free fall layout here. Here is the code of this layout manager. First of all, we have important packages. The packages are import java.aw2.statics. This package will help you to define the JFrames. This is abstracts windowing toolkit package. Next one is import javax.strings.statics package. This package will enable you to define different controls of the GUIs like buttons. Then we have the public class frame1 extends JFrames. This is a class which is inherited from the JFrames. JFrame is a built-in class, extends relations, defines the inheritance, and frame1 is our own class. It is a public class. Here is a constructor public frame1 container C get content pane. This defines the window of the GUI. Next is set c.set layout new flow layout. This line defines the flow layout of arrangement of different components over the GUI. So this layout says that the first control which is added to the container will appear on the top left position, and the second control will appear after the first control, and so on. Now here we have defined 4 different buttons: button B1 new buttons, button 1. You can also define J buttons, but button also will work. Now button 2 new buttons, second buttons, similarly third and fourth button. These are the labels that will appear over the buttons. Now these buttons are added here. If you add first button, that first button will appear. If you add fourth button first, then the fourth button will appear first, and so on. So the GUI will show different buttons according to the sequence that they are added to the containers. Next, define this location of this window over the screens, that is 700 to 300. So 700 from this x-axis and 300 towards the down axis. From there, this window will be rendered. And then we have the size, which is 300 by 300, which means that exactly the same size of width and height. And set visible true means it will be appear over the window will appear when the program will be run. Next is public stated void main function. It is a void main function which must be in every Java programs, and the Java program start execution from the void main function. And inside of the body of the void main we have frame1 application new frame1, which is in fact the constructor, and this is defined through the object instantiation. So here we have instantiated the object, and here is the constructor. So when the object is instantiated, automatically this constructor will be called, and it will show you 4 different buttons with the help of the flow layout. Dear students, we will execute this code. For this purpose, right click here, exit the slides, and start your Eclipse. My Eclipse is here, which is 2020 version. So you have to download the latest part of your Eclipse, that is a version of your Eclipse, because this Eclipse will support many plugins and also libraries. So this Eclipse will help you to perform the rich programming in Java. So meanwhile, our Eclipse IDE will be available, and it will be in fact started. Now it is starting the Eclipse IDE. First of all, you require this part of the code in your project. So right click, copy it, and go to your Eclipse IDE. Meanwhile, the Eclipse IDE is running for us. Now you can see that Eclipse IDE is available. Here we have the previous program, so you can also create the new programs, or you can remove the code of the previous programs. So you already know how to create the programs. So first I have pasted one part of the code, and now this part of the code as well. So copy here, and paste it here. Now you can see that the code has completely pasted, but you can see that the class name is class 1. Class name is class 1, so that's why I required to change the class name here. Class 1. And here is, I will make changes in the class 1. Now here you can see that the changes has been completed. Here also we required to change the objects that is instantiated inside of the void main function. So also changes has been performed here. Now changes are completed. So now just click here to execute this program. So click this green button. You can see this is the output. You can see that the buttons are added to the GUI according to this their sequence. Now if you define another new buttons here, for example, here I want to add another two buttons. This is button 5 and this is button 6. This is button 6 and now button 5. These are labels that will be appear over the buttons. This is 6, but I am adding first 6 c dot add. C dot add functions will help you to add the button. So button 6 is added here. Similarly, c dot add, and here that is button 4. That is 5. Button 5s are added before button. In fact, button 5 are added at the end. So you can see that our code has been completed. Now again run the program. If you have run the program, you can see that 1, 2, 3, 4. But after 4th we have 6 and 5th. If you will add another buttons, so then these buttons will be shifted to that left positions here. So this is called the flow layout. Now we will resume our slides. The next important layout manager is called the border layout. As its name shows that we will divide the GUI with the help of some borders. For example, east, west, north and south borders. Exactly like the map of a country, we have 4 different borders like east, west, north and south borders. Similarly, it sets the components into the borders of the containers such as center layouts, east layout, west layout, north layout and south borders of the containers. Now where we will define east, west, north and south borders. Here you can see the output. Center is the center, your right is east and your left is west. North is the positions, there's top, and at the bottom we have the south. So this is the border layout which defines 5 different directionality of the layouts of the systems. Now this layout is very much important in the different sort of the application, like when you, for example, see the .NET Visual Studio. So here you can see the toolbox which contains multiple sort of the components. While here you can see the solution explorers where you can add or delete any sort of the project or components of your project. Now at the bottom we have the error message sections, so it provides different sort of the errors. While on the center we have the development sections where we can perform some sort of the developments by dragging and drop the components from the west position over this GUI. And over the top we have some menus, which is the north position of your graphical user interface. So these are 5 different positions where you can place the components. So this is the border layout. Now how this border layout works here, this is the example code. You can in fact learn from these examples to implement such the layout manager. So first we have defined here different packages are the libraries. Our first library is import java.awt.statics, that is abstracts windowing toolkit library. Second library is import java x.swing.statics. This is the swing library. First one is abstract windowing toolkit library. This library contains the classes such as JFrames, while the swings library contains the classes such as buttons, labels, etc. Now then we have our public class frame1 extended from the JFrame. So frame1 is the built-in, is our own class, which is a public class, and it is inherited from the JFrame. Here is the constructor public frame1. It is the constructor. In the constructor, we first have instantiated the container object, container C get contain pin. Here you can see we have no new containers, that is constructor, but this get contain pin function provides the memory to the C, which is in fact the object of the container. C.set layout new border layouts. Here we have defined the border layout. Then we have in fact defined 5 different buttons here, and these are the labels or the buttons: center, east, west, north, south. Now we will add these 5 buttons in the containers, but also with their border layouts. So c.add b1 border layout.center. This line will add b1 button in C, and its border layout will be in the center position. This is the center position. Here c.add b2 border layout.east. So east is our rightmost position, right side position. Then we have b3, which is added inside the container C, but its border layout is the west. West is the left position. Then we have c.add b4 border layout.north. North is the top position, that is north. And similarly, the south is the bottom positions on the GUI. So b5 button is added towards the bottom positions, that is border layout.south. Now after adding all these 5 buttons to their respective border layouts, then we have defined the size of the GUI, which is 700, 300. That means that 700 x-axis pixels and 300 pixels toward the y-axis are supported, and this size of the window is 300, 300 means that here it will define the size of the window, but this will define the location of this window over the screen. Set visible true, so that means that the components will be in fact visible, and the GUI will be visible true when the program will run. Here is the public static void main function string args. That means that we must have one important function in every Java program, which is the void main function, and the program execution is starting from here. There is the object frame1 application new frame1. It is the objects. When this constructor is instantiated through the objects, then the constructor will be called, which is in fact responsible for creating the GUI and adding that GUI to the border layout. Now dear student, we will execute this code so that you will see how the output is created. For this purpose, close the slides or exit the slides. First you have to transfer this side of code and then this side of code. But it is better if you just copy the constructor code, this code which is the constructor code, and here you can see that place this code here. First remove the previous one and then place it here. Also I have to remove this code. Okay, go to your slides and just copy these last 3 lines of the code. You do not require to copy it because already we have the void main function here. So you can see that code has been completely transferred here. Now to check output, just run this this project. So click this green buttons to execute the program. You can see that these are in fact buttons, and the buttons are arranged according to their layouts. If I increase the size of this GUI, you can see that also the same position is maintained here by the components. So this is the border layout. We have center, east, west, north and south border layouts. Exactly, you can see here, this is the center, this is in fact east, this is west and this north, and these components are on the south, north and south. Okay, so this was the example of the border layout. The third layout is very much important, called the grid layout. As its name shows, the grid layout defines the grid where the components will be added to the grids here. In simple words, the grid layouts divide the container into number of rows and columns and then place the components on that particular rows and columns. So it provides containers into the grid. In fact, the whole container is divided here as like the grid. Every component has the same width and height in the grid layout. So this is one of the problem here. You cannot change the size of that in terms of the width and height of the different components over the grid layouts. Here is the example of the grid layout. For example, there are 5 different buttons or controls. So this grid layouts has divided the overall GUI into number of rows and columns. So here you can see there are 3 rows and 2 columns, and then places the controls over that particular cells. So to understand this example, you have to match this output with the code here. Here we have import java.aw2.static package. Then we have import javax.swings.static package. AW2 is the abstracts windowing toolkit package and is responsible for using this class. So this class is in fact defined in this package, and swings package also is in fact useful for defining all these controls, for example buttons, and then adding these buttons to the container. Then we have public class frame1. Frame1 is our own class, and which is inherited from the JFrames. Inside of the body of the class, we have defined the constructor public frame1 constructor container C get contain pin. This defines the size in terms of memory to the containers. So container C get contain pins will define the container here. See that set layout new grid layout. Now exact layout manager which we have defined. See that set layout new grid layouts, and in the grid layouts we have 3 rows 2 columns. Exactly, you can see 3 rows and 2 columns here. So this is 3, 2. Now first we have defined some buttons, button 1, button 2, button 3, button 4 and button 5, and there are the labels of these buttons through their constructors, and new operator defines the memory to these buttons. And the button class is implemented in the swings components. Then we have added these buttons to the containers, as the layout of the container is grid layout, 3 rows 2 columns. So when we added all these buttons to these containers, so automatically the first button added will be added to the first cell. Second button will added to this container will be added to the second cell. Third will be added to the third cells, and fourth, fifth, and there are no 6 buttons, so that's why this will be empty here. Then we have defined the positions of the window, or the location of this window over the screens, which is 700, 300, and its size is 300, 300, which is very much square GUI. And here we have defined that this should be visible true, means that this GUI will appear when we will execute this code. Public string voidman is a voidman function which must be in every Java programs, and the program execution started from here, where is the body of the voidman function. Frame1 application new frame1, it is the objects, and here is the constructor of this object. So when this object is instantiated, then this constructor is called, and it defines the full GUI of this example, which is the grid layout. Now, dear student, we will execute this code. For this purpose, exit the slides, and first we need to copy from here. Just we have to copy from this position and go to your previous code, and then you have to add this code here. Here you can see that 5 buttons are added. Next, you have to also add these buttons to the containers. So here we will add all these buttons to the container. Now our code has completely transferred here. Now we will run this example by clicking this green button. So click the run button. Here you can see this is the output. These are the buttons which are added. This one is the free space, and you can in fact also add another controls here so that it should appear at the position 6 here. So you need to define another controls here. Now if you want to add another controls here, for example text fields or text fields, for example I want to add text field, for example T is equal to new text field. Your text fields will take input from the user, and here for example I want to add some text, for example that is grade 6. So we have in fact provided here the text field. So this is field, okay, that's fine. Now I will add this text fields to the container. So here is the T which we have added. Now run this application. So when you run, so you can see that here another text fields has been appeared. So this is the layout manager where you can in fact use the grid layouts to add different components in the Java. So this is the grid layout manager, and the last one is the null layout manager. The null layout manager is used to manage the layout of your components at null level. This is generally a bad practice because you requires the positions of the each and every controls in terms of the pixels here, that is the XY coordinates here. So you can set the layout manager to null as like container.set layout, that is null, just you will pass here the null. But this is not generally used, it is a bad practice, so avoid using the null layout. Here is the example of the null layout. But null layout is in fact enable the components to set its position to the specific position over the GUI. So this position will not be disturbed. Even if you make it, if you want to change the size of this window, then this position will still be maintained here. This is the null layout. So here is the code of null layout. So first we have the libraries, import java.aw2.stacks. It is abstract windowing toolkit library, and here JFrame is defined. Then we have javax.swings components. These are the swing components, for example buttons, and it is defined in this library. Here we have the public class frame1, which is inherited from the JFrame. It is our own public class. Here is the constructor. Inside the constructor we have defined the container C get containment. This gets the GUI, so it defines completely the GUI of the components. C.set layout null, so here is the null layout. Now here we will define the null layout. Next we have defined 5 different buttons. So these are 5 different buttons: B1, B2, B3, B4, and B5 through the button class. Then B1 is equal to set bounds 20, 5 and 60, 20. So these are 2 points. In the points we have 20, 5. So 20 position from toward the x-axis and just 5 position toward the down axis. So this is the starting point here, and 60,20 is this the ending point. So from here to here we have first control. Similarly, this another control is 300, 34, 50 and 60, 20. So 30 towards the x-axis and then 50 towards the y-axis, and this is the position here, which is 60, 20. And similarly, all these buttons position is defined here by using 2 points concepts. Then we have added these buttons to the containers. So C dot add B1, similarly C dot add B2, B3, B4 and B5. Here if you will add these buttons by through any sequence by using this, so it will be in fact not it will not affect the sequence or the position of this button, because position of buttons are already defined here. Now it's set layout 700, 30. This define the positions of the window over the computer screens, that is the locations, and its size will be 300, 300, which is a square window. And set visible true means it will be appear over the GUI when the program will be run. Now here is the progressive wordman functions. The wordman function, we have instantiated the object of the frame1 and the constructor is here. So then this GUI will be created when the constructor is instantiated, and here is the application dot set default close operation frames dot exit on close. When you will click this red button, then the application will be exit here. So if you will run this example, so you will get exactly this output. So I will not execute this example because it is for your practice purpose. You have to do it. Yes, students, here is the assignment for you. I will post this assignment, but you have to complete this assignment after your mid-exams. The assignment is what is CORBA, that is Common Object Request Broker Architectures. What are the application of CORBA? CORBA is in Java, that here you have to provide the code examples of CORBA in Java. And also CORBA architecture in terms of the UML. This is very much important. How the CORBA architecture is defined in the UML. Means that how many classes are involved, what are the relations of these classes, and you have to completely define that what is the CORBA and its architecture in UML. And after exam you have to submit this assignment. Dear student, these are 2 books. You have to study these 2 books. These are very much important books and quite easy. The first book is Think Java, How to Think Like a Computer Scientist by Alan Donnery and Chris Mayfield. And the second book is Java Programming Basic for Absolute Beginners by Nathan Clark. So you have to study these 2 books for your more concepts. Also, if you have any question, you can ask the question through my email ID. I will wait for your question and will respond to you soon as you drop email to me. Thank you very much.